Hi guys. Okay, today I want to talk about one approach to working through your mother's failed parenting. Now, this isn't going to be something that is applicable to everybody, but this is going to be applicable for quite a few of you. And I'm going to take you through a scenario, and there's something that I definitely would like you to do by the time we're done talking here. Now, this is mainly one approach to how you can learn as far as both healing your inner child and also showing that you have love, compassion, empathy, and sympathy for what somebody else is going through. So many times as trauma survivors, we are sitting in our own shit. We're sitting in our own swamp. And our mindset is all about woe is me and woe is my life. And, I'm the one that's broken. Okay. But I want to share a couple things with you that may have you start to look at something a little differently. All right. So, first off, let's talk about some stats. Now, depending on where you get your stats from, they're a little all over the map. So, I'm just going to ballpark with some of the stats that I'm going with. Projected as far as in the US, right, is that 40% of women in the US have been sexually abused. Okay. And of that number, 80% have been abused by the age of 25. Now, the stat I know of as far as children, people who were abused by in childhood, and this is predominantly female, okay, 1 in 3. For men, it's 1 in 5. So 1 in 3 children were sexually abused. Okay, by the time, so that's at 33%. By the time they're 25, the number's up to 40% of women have been sexually abused. And for men, you've got 1 in 5 as a child, and then that number goes a little bit higher by the age of 25. Now, beyond that, one of the other damning things is this is only with a projected third of the people that report. So if you realize that only a third of the people report, you realize that number is actually it's higher. It's higher. All right. That means a whole lot more people than we thought are walking around with, traumas. And let me ask you something. How many people do you talk to about your trauma? How many people do you talk to about your guilt, your shame, about the situation that happened to you? How many people do you tell the awful shit that went down? Probably you can count them on one hand. Because most of us, when we sit in that space of guilt and shame, we don't want to tell anybody that, do we? Now, over the last, we'll call it 30 years, mental health has been a much bigger thing, right? A lot more people are getting therapy. A lot more people are being open. We saw a few years ago with the whole Me Too movement where all of a sudden, people started coming out of the woodwork about, their sexual abuse experiences, whether it was as an adult or whether it was as a child. Okay. And so what we know is that there's a problem. But here's the deal. The problem has always been there. This isn't a new phenomenon. Okay. Women have not just started recently being abused. Okay. We have been abused throughout time. And I think all the movies we've seen that reference anything in the past, it's pretty clear of that. We know that we've been in a patriarchal society, where men have had control over women and their bodies. So being sexually abused, assaulted, whether you are a child or whether you're an adult, is not new. It's just been what the norm has been. Okay, which means that there's a whole lot of us walking around with this guilt, shame, anger, frustration, all of these emotional problems that manifest into physical problems. All right, now, what does that mean to you? The first thing that I want to tell you is that so many people look at their family situation and they're sitting in a space that it was only them. They're the only ones that were abused. Okay, and we kind of internalize that and say, oh, woe is me. And, I don't know anybody else. But I would counter that. Because you got to understand that even all the way through the 60s and 70s, women were not encouraged in any way, shape, or form to talk about this sort of thing. So they kept all that stuff quiet. They kept it private. They kept it bottled up. Now, I just shared with you the statistics, right? And this is actually what I would like you to do. The next time that you're sitting down to a family dinner, okay? And let's imagine, I'm just going to ballpark what the family dinner looks like, all right? And, regardless of, whether your dad's there or not, I'm just talking about the women in your life, all right? So we've got Thanksgiving coming up in another month, all right? So let's say you've got mom, grandma, your aunt, your sister, and let's say there's another in-law, okay? And then there's you. So there's 6 of you, all right? Now, you may be sitting there at that table thinking you are the only one that's been abused and was you. But I just gave you the statistics. And now I want you to look around the table and figure out statistically which one of your other family members have also been sexually abused. Because if you're sitting at a table with 6 people, then what I can tell you is 2 of you were abused as a child. And what I could furthermore tell you is that 3 out of 6 of those women sitting at that table were definitely abused by the time they were 25 years old. So which 3 of you were abused? And then start to wonder if it was your mom. Was it your grandma? Okay, you think these women tell you these things? Of course not. They're not going to tell you those things. And the question I have is, could their failings as a parent, because of their own emotional issues and internalization that they had, because of their abuse that they had, that they've never shared? And can you, in that moment, take a step back and see if you can have compassion and sympathy and empathy for what may have happened to them? There may be stories you don't want to hear, right? You don't want to hear. What if it was your dad that you loved that did it in a drunken, night one night? How does that affect your psyche, right? So these are the things that sometimes get a little tricky, okay? But one of the ways to heal your inner child, I'm not saying this is the way, I'm just saying this is one of the ways, okay? And one of the ways to look outside yourself and extend compassion for somebody else's moral failing, in your family unit, is to see that maybe they too were abused in another scenario. And that maybe that abuse sparked all sorts of conflict within them. And it's the source of that conflict that created their failures. Their failures that they weren't able to, be a better parent on. Or maybe they were projecting a certain thing because of a situation they were in that they never shared, that they don't want to share. How many moms want to share the story of their rape with their daughter? Probably not a lot. Probably not a lot. Okay? But I encourage you, sit down, think of that family dinner, think of the women in your life, and statistically do the averages. Okay? And figure out, all right, who was abused? If you want to broach that question with them to see, some solidarity, then go for it. Every family has family skeletons. Every single one. And the question is, do you know all the family skeletons or not? I know my nieces and nephews don't know the skeletons in my family. And I'm not even talking about me. I'm not talking about other family members. I know some nieces and nephews that have no idea about their mother and what happened there. So a lot of times we're not able to think outside ourselves. This is a moment I'm encouraging you. Think outside yourself and see if you can extend the same compassion, sympathy, and empathy that you want somebody to return back to you. All right. I hope this helps. Drop a comment for sure. If you've got a comment on this, might trigger some people. I wouldn't be surprised. Otherwise, watch my other videos. I do have a playlist for the Trauma Tribe series, and subscribe to my channel. And if you're looking for life coaching advice, then you definitely can reach me on my website at talktopalace.com. And if you just want to follow me for some general life advice, then I'm on Instagram and Facebook at talktopalace.com.